Hey folks, Sprocket here. It's the next day working on the other side. So, one thing I forgot to mention yesterday. If you're going to be replacing these upper control arm shafts and bushings, I strongly recommend you pull these nuts, which are the ones that go up here, before you pull loose the arm up inside of there. It will be very difficult to get those out later. Well, no, I guess not. You could probably put it in a vise and use an impact. But either way, if you don't have that option, I would suggest doing it inside the car like I just did with a wrench. It's, on this old Chevy Nova here, it's a 15/16. Just so happens I have one of those from my days of working on trailers. So, something to think about. Alright, something else. These bolts right here, there's two of them obviously, 1, 2. These are the shafts I was talking about. Get this thing in focus, there it goes. So you want to make sure you pay attention to these spacers. Get a little closer on that. This is for my benefit, so you can see how many of them are in there. So that way when you go to put stuff back together, you put it the same way. The other thing you want to make sure of, and I kind of screwed up yesterday, I put an impact on the head side of the bolt here. Well, don't do that, because the shank on the head of just below the head of these bolts has splines in it, which basically press into this plate. They are not meant to turn. You're only supposed to turn the nut. And I think the reason for that is so you can get these shims in here without the head, or without the bolt spinning, as you tighten down the nut. So don't do like I did. Don't use an impact on these bolts. Only, if you can get an impact in here on this end, great, but don't use it on the bolt, only on the nut. Alright, so I don't know how well you can see this. This is my lower control arm. This lip right here, you can't press this thing out of here without bending this lip back down toward the rubber. Apparently the factory decided it was a good idea to, what's the word I'm looking for, spread it out, I guess. But it will not go through where my fingernail is here, this edge, okay? There's a little step up right here. It won't go through there unless you literally bend this thing down in against the rubber. I found that out yesterday when I was doing the other side. I was not happy about it. Now, what I told you I would show you yesterday, I don't know how well this is going to show up. Right here, I don't know how well you can see that, but there's a pocket. From here, steps start sloping down. This is where you want to make sure you put the coil spring in the bottom. Now, walk out here, I'll show you on the spring itself. So, right here, I have the spring compressed, but if you look down here at the bottom of it, you see that nub sticking out? That's where that goes. That's what I meant by when I said you have to have it twisted in the right orientation, otherwise it doesn't fit in there right. It can cause you problems getting it in. This is what it looks like when it's compressed. Now, right now, again, it's under load, so you can be stupid careful with this thing, because any slight jostling in that thing, if that compressor breaks, this thing becomes a deadly projectile, so be careful. The other thing, let me get down in here and show you up inside. So this is what it looks like without control arms on it, if you didn't know. Alright, so up inside here, you can see the rubber gasket, that insulator, and a spider. And right here is that lip I was talking about. This is that little pocket that thing has to sit into for it to be in there straight. So now I showed you what I said I was going to yesterday. Alright, something I wanted to mention because it's pertinent to rusty bolts. I'm sorry if I'm insulting someone's intelligence, but this is a 12 point, this is a 6 point. Each point's obviously, well, not obvious to everyone, but that's why I said, forgive me if I'm insulting your intelligence, but anytime you're breaking anything loose, you want to try and go for a 6 point if you got one. They will grip the head of the bolt or nut a lot better than the 12 point. A 12 point has a bad tendency of rounding stuff off if it's not brand spanking new. So always try to use a 6 point. Alright, so everything up under here is done. As you can see, I greased it. Now what I did was, to make sure that the suspension was settled, is I backed it down the driveway, then pulled it back up on the ramps so I could tighten down. Ooh. Can we see it? Nope, it's behind stuff. This bolt right here, and the one on the other side, and then up there, you can barely see it where my finger's pointing, those on both ends. So that way I wanted to make sure the weight of the car was on them before I tightened them down. Now I also made sure, as you can see, there's fresh grease coming out of my fittings, that everything was greased. Like I said, that's your most important step after you get done with this kind of thing, is grease everything. So that's it for now. Have a good one.